This kitchen fire could quickly get out of hand, but luckily, there is a secret weapon that we all have in our kitchens that can save your life. Now, luckily, I've got some firefighter friends looking out for me here in the fire test kitchen so that I can show you how safely. Grease fires can be started by a bunch of things, including throwing frozen food directly onto hot oil, or when the cooking oil itself just gets too hot. And when they start, they spread very quickly. Cooking fires are the leading cause of home fires in the U.S., and people aged 65 and older are at greater risk of dying in one than the rest of the population. So, what happens if one breaks out in your home? Don't panic. Here's how to put out a grease fire safely. You may be tempted to take the pot off of the stove and put it in the sink or outdoors or something. Bad idea. Unfortunately, that just spreads the flames around. So what should you do? Grab an oven mitt to protect your arm and the pot lid, which you should always keep nearby. And then you just kind of slide it in, staying as far away as possible, and smother the flames. And I was a little nervous, but looks like it worked. Woo! Cutting off the oxygen supply is the best way to kill the flames. The key is to make sure the lid fully covers flames. The key is to make sure the lid fully covers the pan, and don't remove it until the pan has completely cooled down. By the way, a baking sheet also work. Anything metal that will deprive the fire of oxygen. You can also use a Class K fire extinguisher. That's the best type for grease fires. Ideally, you'd check the label in use water on a grease fire. You see, water and oil repel each other, which will result in a scary, explosive fireball that shoots up from your stove. I am not kidding. If for some reason the fire does not go out or it starts to spread, get everybody out of the building safely and then call 911. For more safety tips, visit aarp.org/home-family.
Hello, my name is Teresa Collins, and I am an Executive Council member for AARP Illinois. AARP, a nonprofit, nonpartisan member organization, has been working to promote the health and well-being of older Americans for more than 60 years. AARP is proud to represent all those who are 50 plus in Illinois and our 1.7 million members. And we thank you for the opportunity to be your wise friend and fierce defender. Our mission is to enhance the quality of life for all as we age, leading positive social change and delivering value to members through advocacy, service, and information. When making changes to your diet, you don't need to go it alone. It's preferable to get some help from your primary care doctor or a dietitian. Your doctor can check your vitamin and cholesterol levels to make sure you're safely embarking on your new way of eating. A dietitian can assess your needs and create a meal plan that's not only tailored to your goals, but also sustainable over the long term. Please enjoy today's class, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Hello, AARPers. I am Amy, and coming in from Morton, Illinois. Today we are going to be making a peasant dish. It is shepherd's pie. So we have a lot of flavors that we're going to be packing into this neat little dish. And there's a couple ways you can prepare it, and there's a couple little hacks or shortcuts that you can take if you want to make the process of putting this together a little more streamlined and a little faster. I know we all have time issues. Not everybody has an abundance of time on their hand, especially if we're caring for somebody. Some of these shortcuts may be right up your alley. So let's start with the starting point. Okay, I'm going to make mashed potatoes. I have diced and seasoned and parboiled some potatoes. To this, I am going to add a whisked egg, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and some butter and some cream. You could also use half and half. You could use milk as well. That has been warmed up slightly. And I'm going to add that to my pot right here. Not even going to dirty a bowl. I'm just going to do this right in the pot. I'm going to grab my handy dandy potato masher and I'm going to start mashing my potatoes. If this doesn't look like fun to you, if you don't have any aggression you need to get out on anything, you can always use an instant mashed potato. I know there are some that you can buy in the store for about $1 a bag or a little packet that are really delicious. And a lot of them have some different flavors. You can get roasted garlic. You can get some with cheese already mashed in. But here we go. We're just going to keep mashing these potatoes until they get fairly smooth. I don't mind a couple of lumps here and there, but again, I definitely want a mashed potato. And I can feel my face getting red already, and I think I just hit the cameraman with some flying potatoes. So we're going to move on from there. That looks good. All right. So our next step is going to be to preheat our oven to 400 degrees. I've already got that going for us, and now I'm going to work on some vegetables. So what we have for our shepherd's pie is I've got half an onion, I've got a carrot, I have 1 clove of garlic, I also have some fresh rosemary and some fresh thyme that I pulled out of the garden today. So we'll deal with these one at a time. So I'm going to take my onion, I'm going to keep the root end, the little hairy end intact. I'm going to cut the top end off of the onion, and that gives me a nice little corner, a nice little edge to start peeling that skin off with. And that should come off pretty darn quick. There we go. And I'm going to dice this. I want to keep a reasonable size dice because I want chunks of onion in my shepherd's pie. I don't want just the flavor of onion. I don't want just the flavor of onion. I want to actually see and have the texture. So I'm going to start by making some horizontal cuts in my onion that go back to the root end but don't go through it. I'm going to start by making some horizontal cuts in my onion that go back to the root end but don't go through it. I'm going to come up one. Some horizontal cuts in my onion that go back to the root end but don't go through it. I'm going to come up one. I'm going to do the same thing. I might do one more, but I'm not going to do any more than that because I want some chunky onion. This is rustic. Here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and turn that. And now I'm going to cut straight down, and I have all these lovely, nice dices. Simple as that. Go all the way back to the back of our onion. At that point, I can make some little cuts. Like wasting anything. That's what we've got left of the onion. So we're good to go there. So I've got some diced onion right here. Next step. Go ahead and give myself, because this is not safe to work with a knife. I want all my fingers intact. I'm going to give myself a flat surface to work on. Then I'm going to take that and cut it into little strips. Okay, then I'm going to cut these into some planks. Move here. Give myself a flat spot to work. Cut those up. Now cut some planks. There we go. move here. Give myself a flat spot to work. Cut those up. Now cut some planks. My onions. So I'm going to go through and cut these into strips. And so on. So yeah, this is a peasant dish. This was something that was easy to put together. It used a lot of vegetables that were easily resourceable. The meat that is typically found in shepherd's pie a lot of times is lamb. We're going to use a combination of meats today. We're going to use some beef and some lamb. You can use whatever you want. You could use, I mean, if you wanted to do something different, you could use ground turkey, ground chicken, depending on, you know, what you're interested in achieving for your diet. It's going to change the flavor a little bit, but not a lot. So here we go, coming up on the last of those cuts like that. Then we're going to turn around and make a small little dice. All right. Just grab handfuls of those, run the knife through them. And when I'm about done with this, I'll start warming up my skillet, which is where my vegetables and my meats are going to cook. We'll just keep working our way through this pretty quickly. So this is a dish that is great to make ahead and then freeze in portions. So a lot of times you'll see this made in a baking dish. If you do that, you can portion it out and put them into some freezer containers and freeze them. You can also do what we're going to do today, and that is bake them off in ramekins or small dishes. So they're like individual servings, and that makes them easy to store, easy to serve, and it actually lowers the cooking time. So if you're cooking smaller vessels or smaller units, then they're not going to take as long as a large casserole dish. All right. So I've got that. I'm going to slide those to the side here. I'm going to start warming up my pan just because I want to get it on the heat. I've got a little bit of oil in my pan, and I'm just going to turn that on for right now, and then I'm going to continue on with my vegetables. So next is a clove of garlic. So I'll take that top little piece off. That gives me a nice spot to start peeling. And I find that the skin comes off pretty quick after that. If you're having trouble with that and need a little extra boost, you can take anything with a flat bottom and just kind of crunch it, and that will get the skin off as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just do some slices. My goal on this is to mince it. Everybody just about loves the taste of garlic. Not everybody, or hardly anybody, probably wants giant chunks of garlic. So we're going to mince this through, and then we'll start cooking our vegetables. There we go. Just a couple back and forths. There we go. Looks great. I'm going to take a look at my oil, see how that heat is going. All right. There we go. Looks pretty good. All right, so let's take a look at that pan. I want to see that oil rolling around the pan, nice and loose. I want it almost to look like water. That's telling me that it's heating up some. I'll take the test. And I'll say in about 30 seconds we'll drop those vegetables in. In the meantime, I'm going to take my rosemary. I'm going to move my garlic to the side. I'm going to take my rosemary and pull my leaves off of it. The stems on rosemary are very woody. You don't want to add those to your recipes. They're not something you're going to be able to chew through and eat, so we don't want those introduced into the dish at all. So I just peel those leaves off. There we go. And then here's my thyme. I'll go ahead and just strip the leaves off of my stem on those as well. Just pull those leaves, and then I'll just go ahead and mince those all at once. I think my pan is hot now. That's the sizzle you want to hear. So I'm going to add my onions. I'm also going to add my carrots. And I always just do a little bit of seasoning in the pan, regardless of whether your recipe calls for it or not, because I think seasoning at this point, at this juncture, absorbs into the food. So it's not like you're seasoning the top of the dish after you're done. You're seasoning the middle of the ingredients, or the ingredients in the middle of the dish. So we're going to let that go for a little bit. I'm going to do a quick mince on my rosemary and thyme. All right. I'm looking to get a little bit, and a carrot. I'm looking to get a little bit of color on those vegetables. Once that happens, I'll go ahead and add my garlic. I don't want the garlic to cook too hot or too long. I don't want it to burn. Burnt garlic smells very acrid, and it tastes burnt, and it can ruin the taste of a dish. It can take over the taste of a dish. So you just want to cook garlic for a little bit of time, just until you smell the aroma of garlic. As soon as you smell it in the pan, you're going to know that you're good, and you can move on to the next step. So I've got this looking good. I might add just a tiny bit more oil. I'll tell you why in just a moment. It has to do with the meats that we're using here today. All right. All right. I hope all of you love shepherd's pie, or if you aren't familiar with the dish, it's going to be a compilation of diced and sauteed vegetables, ground meat, and usually peas, sometimes, in this case today, corn, and a couple other flavoring products, and then that's going to go into a dish and covered with our mashed potatoes. So I can't imagine anybody not loving this dish. All right. Starting to get some translucence to the onion. I can tell my oil is already turning kind of an orange color from the pigment in the carrot coming out. So looking pretty good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add my garlic. There we go. And like I said, I'm not going to cook that too long. I'm going to let my nose tell me when that is done. Okay, so we are going to be using two different meats today. I actually have ground filet, which is very lean, and I've got ground lamb, which is typical in this dish. So I've got a combination of both. Some people find that lamb might be a little bit not to their liking. I'm going to add my herbs now because I smell that garlic. It's definitely coming out. All right, got that. I'm going to give it a quick little stir. Smell those herbs. Smell that rosemary immediately. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and add my ground meat. There's the filet. Look at how lean that is. There's no fat. And that is why I added a little bit more oil a little bit ago. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and add some more right now. That meat just doesn't have a lot of fat to give off. So I'm going to go through, sorry about the noise, and I'm going to start chopping that meat up. And we're going to cook it until it's most of the way cooked through. I don't have to worry about it being all the way cooked through because this whole thing is going to go into the oven and cook further. So you don't want to actually take the meat all the way up to it's done this point and then cook it further, cook it again, because then you end up overcooking it and you tend to dry the meat out. And I want to have, you know, some juiciness in here. While this is cooking and as I'm starting to get a cook on the meat, I'm going to start adding a couple other ingredients. I'll reach for them here in just a quick second. Just want to get a nice little chop on things here. Apologize for the noise. All right, I'm going to bring in some other ingredients here to start infusing the meat and the veg with those flavors. So, I have some flour, and what I'm doing with this is I'm going to start building a roux in my pan. A roux is a thickener. It's classic French cooking. I'm going to stir that together. You will put fat, like oil, and flour in a pan and cook it for a minute or two until you get the raw taste of the flour cooked out, and then you add a liquid, and that creates a nice gravy. And the thickness of that gravy is going to depend on the ratio of your liquid to your flour and fat combination. So I'm going to keep going here. I've got some lovely tomato paste. That's going to give it a deep, deep, rich flavor. I'm going to add that to the pan, and I'm going to stir that around until it almost starts sticking to the bottom. Maybe get that stirred in there. And I am totally okay with little bits cooking to the bottom of the pan. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I've got little bits there. That's called fond. That is going to be absolutely delicious once we release those solids from the bottom of the pan with our liquid, which is coming up in just a quick second. All right, that tomato paste is visually gone. I don't see lumps of it anymore, so I'm ready to move on. Okay, so here I've got some beef broth. That's what's going to deglaze the pan. Hear that sizzle? I'm going to start scraping up those bits off the bottom of the pan. While I'm doing that, I'm going to add a little depth of flavor, a little Worcestershire sauce. A little of that goes a long way, so you never want to use too much of that. I'm scraping those bits off the side of my skillet and off the bottom of the pan, because all of that is super concentrated flavor. Bits that have browned. Yum. Okay, so this is going to boil as it is. We're going to let this simmer. I'm going to turn that down just a little bit. I'm now going to let it simmer for probably about 8 minutes. I've cooked a little farther now, so we can cut that time down just a little bit. All right, so now go ahead and we've got 2 more ingredients to put into our shepherd's pie. Those are very traditional peas and somewhat traditional corn. So I've got some frozen peas that I've thawed. You actually don't even have to thaw them. They can go right in frozen. I also have some whole kernel corn. All we've got to do is just warm those through. There's really not too much to cooking them. You can use frozen corn. You can use canned corn. You can use, if the season is right, corn right off the cob. I mean, that would be so delicious. Anytime you can use a fresh vegetable over one that's been processed is going to be such good flavor. All right, I'm going to go ahead and grab a little fork. I'm back. I'm going to taste this just to see if my seasoning's all right. Needs a little more salt. Needs more pepper. So I'm going to adjust that now so that I don't wish that I did later. That should be good. So that's it. That is our filling. It created a nice little gravy in there with that roux, with that flour, and then the beef stock that we poured in, and the Worcestershire. So, all right, so now we're going to go ahead and fill our ramekins. So I've got a ramekin right here. I'm going to take my spoon. Just a minute. I'm going to get another spoon. Thank you. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and I've got 4 ramekins, so let's do this much. Actually, fill these ramekins about 3/4 of the way full without filling. All right, we'll do this one. I'm going to get all that gravy in there. And if we have the luck of the Irish on our side, we're going to end up with exactly the right amount of filling. And I think we're going to be pretty close. Or there's going to be just enough and 3 spoonfuls extra, which is my reward. Nope, I think we're going to use it all. Darn the luck. All right, so now the only thing we have to do is we've got to go back to our potatoes. Now, what I've done is I've put the potatoes in a piping bag, or you could use a zip top bag. If you don't want to be that fancy, you can just take a spatula and kind of mash it over the top. But this is what we're going to do. All right, we're going to go ahead, put our ramekins on a tray. There's a lot of potatoes. Tell you what, let's do this. I'm backtracking. I'm going to do a scoop of here, scoop here. Now I've just made 4. So somebody's going to get one that wasn't going to get one before. All right. Beautiful. I'm going to take my potatoes. Here's my piping bag. Gonna get a good twist on that. I'm going to take a pair of scissors. Snip the end off. I'm going to make it a decent size hole because I want to get the potatoes out. And I'm going to start on the outside of my ramekins, and I'm just going to start squeezing and filling. And I will work my way in in a circular motion until I cover everything up. Beautiful. Next one. Then once these are done, I will pop these into that 400-degree oven. They're going to go, so for an 8x8 baking dish, they say about 15 to 20 minutes. Because these are smaller, they may take a little less time. I'm just going to keep an eye on them. And keep in mind, all the ingredients are cooked. So we're not really looking for doneness. As a matter of fact, the amount of time I put in, even with the ground meat in the saucepan, I am certain that all that meat is cooked to a perfect or proper doneness temperature, so there's no issues there. So really the only visual cue you're going to look for in the oven is once the potatoes start getting little golden brown edges on them and looking a little crispy, you can call it good. That is it. A little extra here. All right. So that is it. We've got 4 shepherd's pies. I'm going to go ahead and spray a little bit of I've got butter flavored cooking spray. I'm going to spray each one of these. This is going to enhance the browning as well. And I'm going to pop these into that 400-degree oven, and we will revisit when they're all done. All right. See everybody in, maybe 15 minutes or so.
Hey, AARP fans, Chef Amanda here, and I'm gonna pick up where Amy left off. She'll be back in a few minutes with her shepherd's pie, which I can't wait to see hot out of the oven, golden and toasty. Definitely one of my favorite stick to the rib dishes, and with the winter season upon us, I think that would make everybody happy to have that for dinner, just like Chef Amy said. Well, now we're gonna make one of my absolute favorite desserts. We're gonna make an apple crisp. I love an apple crisp because it has the same delicious flavors of an apple pie, but it's a heck of a lot simpler and comes together a lot more quickly. So we are actually doing a half of a recipe of our apple crisp from what you have on your written recipe here. So just be mindful of that as we're cooking, that the amounts might be slightly different. The first thing I'm going to start with is browning my butter. I think that's what gives our apple crisp just a bit more flavor. And so by browning the butter, I'm talking about cooking the butter at a low temperature so that we can brown the milk solids that are inside of the butter to make it taste a little bit more sweet and a little bit more nutty. It changes the smell, it changes the taste. I'm actually melting the butter for two different parts of my recipe right here. I'm melting the butter for my crumble topping, but I don't want to dirty another pan, so I thought I'll just do it at one time. So I'm melting my butter for that, and then also the butter that I'm going to cook the apples in. I'm going to melt both of these, brown my butter at the same time, pour half out for my crumble, and leave half in the pan, and then cook my apples in that half. So for right now, I'll go ahead and get started with chopping up some apples. I've got some Granny Smith apples here today, which is my absolute favorite to use for apple pie, crisp, cobbler, all of the above. I like the tartness that it brings because we're going to add sugar to it, and we don't want it to be too sweet. Also, the Granny apples tend to be a bit more structure, have a bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? They're a bit crunchier. They're not quite as soft as other apples, and so they're going to hold up to sauteing and then baking for a little bit better than a softer apple or a sweeter apple would do. So I cut off all four sides of my apples, and now I am just trying to dice them nice and uniformly. I am leaving the skin on because I want a nice, easy, simple dessert that doesn't require me to do a lot, and this is definitely it. You don't notice that skin is there, so I think it's perfectly fine to leave it on. My butter is starting to pop and whistle, so I'm turning it down to low. And now I'm going to use my sense of smell to tell me when that butter is nice and brown and nutty. So again, chopping those apples uniformly. And if you move pretty quick, you don't need to douse them in lemon juice to keep them from browning, because we're going to try and move pretty quick here. Hopefully by the time I'm done with my apples, my butter will be ready. Obviously, we're going to embrace some traditional fall flavors here that I think carry over nicely into the winter months like January and February. So obviously some cinnamon, a little bit of sugar, and then some oats to make our crumble topping. Give my butter a little stir. It's starting to smell wonderful. I can see the milk solids starting to brown inside of there. And again, I do love a granny apple here, but I think if you wanted to make a substitution, totally okay. And this is just a great little quickie dessert to send over to somebody that you love or to make pretty quickly. If you're taking care of somebody, you wouldn't have to leave for too long. All right, last set of apples. We'll check on our butter again. It's getting there. Almost nice and brown. Looks like this is all going to work out pretty perfectly timing-wise. All right, while we let that butter go just a little bit longer, we're going to add our seasonings and flavors to our apples now that I have everything chopped up. All right, so into my apples, I'm going to add a little bit of granulated sugar, some cinnamon, a little bit of vanilla, and we're just going to give that a bit of a stir. And then I have a little bit of flour for after I start cooking the apples, just to kind of tighten that mix up. Our butter is almost brown, and again, we're going to pour half that butter out, cook the apples in the rest of the butter, and then reserve that extra brown butter for our crumble, which we'll make next. Now I'm just stirring my cinnamon and sugar mix into my apples. Another thing that would go great in here is some dried cranberries or even fresh cranberries as they start to pop out on the shelves. Depending on what month you're watching this, you might already have those out. All right, so you can see what's happening with our butter here. All of the foam has started to kind of come to the top, okay? And it's hard to see because I'm using a black pan. But all of the milk solids have kind of sunk to the bottom. They're starting to turn brown, and I can smell the brown butter. You can also start to see these little bubbles on the top that are floating start to turn a bit of a tan color. So now we know we have achieved brown butter, which personally I think makes everything taste better. All right, so we're gonna just pour about half of that. I'm gonna eyeball it. That looks pretty good. And that will become our crumble. And we'll put this back on, and then in go our apples for a quick saute. Doing this step of sauteing the apples first before they're going to go into our ramekins actually speeds this whole process up and makes a apple crisp that comes together in about 20 to 25 minutes. I think the thing that takes the longest here is literally chopping those apples up. While those go, we're going to go ahead and get our ramekins ready. I've got some butter that I have reserved right here. And I've got a paper towel. And my butter's just softened, and that's just so that I can kind of grease up my ramekins and get them ready to receive this delicious mixture. And we're going to cook the apples to where they just have a slight crisp, but they're also slightly cooked down. So we're going to be about halfway where we want them to be. Because our ramekins are still going to cook for 15 to 20 minutes so we can brown that crumble on top. So we really don't want to overcook the apples and cause a mushy dessert. And I think I might be able to get a third one out of here with all these apples. I hope so. There are 3 in my family. So if I could take 3 of these home, that would be great. I'm not sure what will happen if I only show up with 2. All right, so I've got my 3 ramekins greased and ready to go. You could also make this in an 8x8 pan or double it up and make a full 9x13 pan. For the sake of our videos, the ramekins just work better. They cook a little bit quicker for us, but they also look super cute. All right, we've got those going. And you can see the butter kind of start to build up in here, which is why we have our flour here. Adding our flour to this mixture is going to tighten all of this up and absorb that butter so that we don't have a greasy, overly buttery apple crisp. All right, we let that go just a little bit longer, then we'll add our flour to that to tighten it up. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and mix our crumble. I'll push those aside. So for my crumble, I've got my brown butter, which you can actually see the brown color a little bit better now that it is inside of my pan here. And to my brown butter, I'm going to add some gluten-free flour. This dish doesn't have to be gluten-free. You can certainly use regular oats. You can use regular flour, but we're going to use gluten-free flour just to show you that gluten-free desserts can be equally delicious. We're going to add some brown sugar to our crumble. We're going to add a bit more cinnamon to our crumble. A little bit of salt. Salt brings out the natural flavor in every single food, whether it be sweet or savory. So we do like a little bit of salt in everything. Now, if you're watching your sodium, obviously, you can easily omit that. And then we've got some certified gluten-free oats. This is going to make for a beautiful crumble. And we're going to use that fork we had and just mix that all up until it kind of feels like wet sand. And again, I love a apple cranberry pie, and it would be very easy to just incorporate the addition of cranberries into the dish, and then you have an apple cranberry crumble. So it's very versatile. This is beautiful crumble, and that brown butter is just going to add just a little bit of extra flavor to it. Big fans of brown butter around here because it takes little to no work, no extra ingredients, but man, does it ever pack on the flavor. This is a beautiful crumble. I love oats in my crumble. They get extra crispy, contributing to that apple crisp that we're talking about. All right, our apples look like they're softening up nicely. There's only one way to know, though, and that's to give them a taste. So I'm going to try my apples, see how they are. See if I want them to cook a little longer. Ooh, so they're just barely tender. They have a little bit of crunch to them, and to me, that's exactly where I want them to be. Then they can finish their cooking process into the oven, and they'll be perfect by the time they come out on the other end. So my first step here is going to be to add my flour to the pan. We're going to give that another stir. That's going to kind of build a roux in the pan and tighten up all that butter, that brown butter that we've been cooking with. It's going to tighten up the extra sugar that we added as well. Look at that, ate up all that butter. And we're definitely going to cook our flour for at least a minute or two, just to cook off all that starchiness and make sure that we don't leave any of that floury flavor behind. How's that smell, Amy? Smells pretty good from this view. All right, that looks amazing. Smells amazing. All right, I grab a spoon. We're going to equally distribute that. And you know what? I hear a timer going off, and I bet that's Amy's shepherd's pie. So we'll be able to tie this together. And I can't think of a perfect meal for a cold winter day than shepherd's pie, followed by an brown butter apple crisp. OMG. The day of ramekins. All right. I've got my apples equally distributed in each one. These are pretty big ramekins. If you have smaller ones, you might need more ramekins. And then a nice layer of that apple crisp going on top of that. And there we go. Pack that down just a tad bit here. And then these are going into the oven to bake for about 10 to 15 minutes just to crisp up the crispy part that makes our apple crisp. So about 10 to 20 minutes actually. And these are going to bake at 350 degrees. Amy, how's that shepherd's pie looking?
Getting close. Very soon.
Well, we'll see you back here in a couple minutes with an apple crisp and a shepherd's pie to show off. Hey guys, we have finished up this awesome meal and a whole week of videos for AARP. And so first, well, should we start with the main course and we'll finish with dessert?
I'd go the other way, but okay. So right here, we've got our finished shepherd's pie. It baked up in the oven and got those mashed potatoes on the top, nice and crispy. Like I said, quick hack would be just to use a store-bought mashed potato or instant mashed potato. You don't have to take the time. And then inside, we've got that beautiful ground beef, ground lamb, onions, carrots, garlic, peas, corn. I mean, it is a meal.
Yeah, I don't know how that could make you feel good eating it. What do you think, Amy?
Yes.
Awesome. And then over here, we've got our delicious apple crisp. I've got a little bit of French vanilla ice cream on there. And I don't know why you don't have a spoon, but I'm digging into that. Look at that. Beautiful apples cooked down with some cinnamon inside. A gluten-free treat for somebody who suffers from that as well. We had it all this week. We visited France, Italy, Louisiana. We went down south. Where else? And we're finishing up, with our Rustic Homestyle phase.
In Ireland.
Yeah.
And back here.
Good old America.
Yeah.
Well, we hope you all have a wonderful winter season, and we hope to see you all back soon for our next set of nationally published AARP videos. Take care, everybody.